I mean, they can't.
It's too long.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfathomable. Most people cannot understand that the universe is, what, 14 or 13 billion, and life's been around for 3 billion. I mean,
There was
even if
a biologist was looking into hyperevolution of like snails in the Bahamas, something like that.
Yeah.
And the journalist interviewing them was like, how could you say, like, how could something as long as 20,000 years be considered? Well, and he's like, no, that's as fast as it gets. You can't evolve a new species faster than that,
Yeah, I think the time scale is well, and of course, that's what we said last time. Most people would rather believe than understand something, and so it's very difficult to understand the immensity of time.
Right. Well, that's that's my next sort of that.
Yeah.
But brings the question to mind. If it's difficult, it just seems like one of those things that's sort of a losing venture to try and wrap your head around.
Well,
I
even
mean, the scale is the problem. You can say I know the length all you want, but to grasp the scale, is different, right?
I mean, we've talked about Mesopotamia before, but writing when people say, well, I understand history. Okay, written history, that's only 5,000 years. They were living in villages with domestic wheat, sheep, goats, pigs for 5,000 years before the invention of writing. And it so the immense. Because of that time I've spent listening to those history lectures and whatnot, now I've bookended it. Those 5,000 years, I know what that feels like, and so it's strange.
You know what's on either end.
I know what's on either end.
It helps you imagine the span.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And it's still even that is just so difficult to understand. Like the economy of ancient Egypt under the pharaohs was essentially identical millennia to millennia. Like they were farming the same way for thousands of years. It's just
Yeah. Well, of course, the pace of change now is, I think, we could argue, is pretty fast.
it's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's just.
We're flying past our headlights.
Yeah, it's.
Well, we know there is an outer limit.
Yeah.
In a way,
yeah, but you end up with what do you do if you're a leader, if you're a god king or something of a traditional society, you know what's happening. It's like, oh, the invaders from the Western Desert are appeared again, and they're ravaging our fields like they did during my grandpa's reign.
Yeah.
What we're facing is we cannot. It's literally unprecedented. Like the nuclear technology is less than a century old.
Yeah.
And we've created millions of tons of waste that will last hundreds of thousands of years if we don't deal with it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. 100,000 years from now, they're going to go, what is this glowing rock
Yeah.
giving us cancer?
Well, I mean, the pace of change, let me put it this way. I am the first one in my generation to be born with an inside toilet in my lineage, with an inside toilet, electricity. Okay, I'm not talking about TV, cell phones, and stuff like that.
Light bulbs.
And we all take it for granted. We that have that take it for granted. I mean, they don't realize that that's new and it's dependent on a lot of social cooperation and money making too, obviously.
Energy.
Yeah, energy, yeah. But I mean, I'm the first one.
They don't realize, they can't imagine a world without it.
Yeah.
The Amish could,
Yeah.
because they live it.
Yeah.
But they're a part of the modern world too.
So now, my dad, without airplanes also, I was born, there were airplanes, but there weren't big commercial jets flying across the ocean. I mean, when was the first flight across the ocean? 30s?
Lindbergh, yeah, sure.
It was just
30s.
just before I was born, the first flight across the ocean. So, I mean, now...
and he made it. It was just a baby too. That's the weird thing, That's you always forget that he was just a. Sorry, that's a bad joke. Go on.
I wish I hadn't mentioned Lindbergh. I don't like his politics.
Well, whatever. Oh, God, no.
Oh, was
We
he?
don't wanna do that.
Was he a sort of a fascist sympathizer?
He was a fascist.
Yeah.
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 which, you know, something, I mean, here's another bad joke. Fascists are people too. Woo. Mm. But, yeah, the thing that the reason why the economy grew so quickly with the discovery of fossil fuels and industrialization, it's tautological, but you have to understand that it was happening to a society that was not industrial. So all of their social mechanisms and all of their political and cultural mechanisms were pre-industrial, and then all of a sudden they had immense amounts of new energy. Now we are a fully industrial society in every way. All of our economic, social constructs, all of our political constructs are based upon industrialization, where nothing you see is handmade. You know, everything comes from somewhere else. Every physical object on the table in front of us came from somewhere else. It is not, well, that cucumber, I grew that, but
Yeah, but most people, food did not come from
Right.
something they grew.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that's even more of a
Right.
thing that needs energy
yeah.
to move it around
Oh yeah.
the planet,
So-
not just the
Oh, yeah.
state.
Oh yeah. So let's turn this into the peak oil episode, right? Like I follow it, and I follow the people who follow it, and the thin end of the wedge is well past us for peak oil. You know, like the warning signs, the warning shots across the bow. Domestic oil production peaked in 1970 in the lower 48, and then the little efforts. You should take your gum out. Sorry, who's picking up? The efforts of Prudhoe Bay and fracking are desperate last minute blips.
It's like clawing at the edge of the cliff as you.
Yes, as you continue to slide down,
Right.
it's really bad, and in 10 years, the trucks will not be running.
Yeah.
Let it be said, what day is it? November 19th, 2019? Half of the natural gas production right now in the United States comes from fracked wells, from the fracking boom. It's a byproduct of the fracking boom. So the fracking boom is ending as we speak. They're not investing in it anymore. It destroyed $250 billion worth of money in the past 10 years went down fracking wells, and they never made a dime. They didn't make a cent. It's uneconomical at any price. So when that money stops flowing, which it's beginning to dry up right now, the fracking boom stops. Hundreds of thousands of young men are unemployed, and half of our natural gas production goes away.
So is this the real reason you think that we have such a concentration of our political and economic interests in the Middle East? And
Yes,
I mean, that's the reason.
that is the reason.
Yeah.
We import something like 7 million barrels a day.
Yeah.
We have immense refining capacity, actually.
Yeah.
Like the U.S. has some of that. Like U.S. and Saudi Arabia have wonderful refining capacity. So it makes a lot of economic sense to ship a lot of raw oil, light sweet crude, to the United States and turn it into gasoline in Louisiana and Texas.
I never thought of it. Yeah.
But in terms of the needs of our economy, the metabolism of it, so to speak, we are the most vulnerable country in the world to oil, to oil shocks. We need it.
Yeah.
You drove here, Muggs. You drove here, Luke.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
No. We talked about this last time. We were the most vole-like of all the economies. We need it at
Yes.
a higher density.
yes.
And
One skipped meal,
yeah.
and the vole starves to death. He can't keep his body
Yeah.
temperature up.
Well, what does that look like on the?
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
What's one skipped meal, and then what
Okay.
is starving to death?
Okay, I'll say this. You know me preparing for collapse and all that other stuff. You will be getting mass chain emails from me when the protests never stop in the major cities ever, and when there are rolling blackouts and rolling brownouts at the electric grid.
So it's going to be hard to check to read those mass chain
Right.
emails.
Right, but I'll be sending them out to you guys and being like, you need to come here to my farm, and we're going to have to ride out the next 25 years together.
Yeah, I've been sort of musing on what are the things I'm gonna wish I knew how to make. You know.
Yeah,
Like-
but when the electric grid starts flickering out, piecemeal, boop 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 boop, you know, like 2 weeks it seems like normal life, and then there was a week where we didn't have heat, and then oh crap, what's going on? And I wanted to go to Seattle today, but there's a berm of burning tires across I-5, and I can't get to see. That's what it'll be like.
Yeah.
This is not the canary in the coal mine. This is the miners trapped down in the coal mine, and it's burning and crashing down on them, and a few are going to make it out.
Of course, the optimistic technologists say, we'll figure it out. We'll get
They don't know
solar."
shit. They don't know a goddamn thing.
Well, I mean, that's what they'll
They're
say.
they're priests.
Yeah.
And then you have to hope for the, and then also, well, our governments will work it out. The powers that be, and they can even, I mean,
No,
it's
don't worry.
not going to happen.
But no, there won't be anybody to answer the phone in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
They're like, I mean, there's one called the Groans of the Britons. It was a letter sent by the last Roman citizens in Britannia after, in 410 AD, the central government withdrew the legions to go fight a civil war on the mainland, and they never came back. And the Romans, they were Britons, they were Romans. They sent a letter to the government like, look, the Saxons are invading in between we're drowned. They're pushing us west. We're either drown into the sea or we get killed by the Saxons. Help us, you know.
No one answered the phone.
No one answered the phone. No, I could pull it
I
up
hate
for
to
you.
laugh.
It's a
Yeah.
brutal thing to read. And like the collapse of Britain was the most intense of all the Roman provinces. Completely, literally, no town life at all.
Whoa.
They lost Christianity. It went pagan. Not back to pagan. It was Germanic pagan.
Oh, an import paganism. Ooh,
Yes.
not even the
Yeah.
wow.
No. And this is incredible. They found the archaeology is really quite sound on this. They lost the potter's wheel.
Oh,
They were importing stuff made with the potter's wheel, and it was an exotic import because they forgot
didn't
how to use
use
the
it.
potter's wheel.
Are those, what are those like? How often do those sort of, I don't know if singularity is the right word, but
Right.
those moments where information doesn't get through.
Yes. Well, the other big example is the Bronze Age collapse. Greece. This is 1187 BC.
Okay, right. So
This is
yeah,
Agamemnon and
1500
Odysseus.
roughly
Yeah.
15
They
centuries.
lost the writing system. They
Oh.
lost all their cities and town life. It was like, so they were Greek. This is Mycenaean civilization. They were Greek. They had a writing system. They had a strong central governments, these princely states, and it went the fuck away.
Are those things that those things aren't necessarily like tied together, but
Not
for
at all.
like an event to be that drastic, you're going to lose technology and knowledge at the same time. I mean, because you mentioned in both
Right.
cases no town life.
Yeah.
Right.
Went away.
So
So you lose the elites,
Yes.
is what must happen.
Well,
because
yes.
including the intellectuals.
and the artisans,
Right.
that
Yes.
obviously that could
Right.
do this.
Specialists.
Yeah.
Specialists.
Yeah.
Because there's no economic incentive for that specialization.
But who's buying? No one's paying the scribe.
There's
to,
no
to
money.
scrib.
Yeah.
There's no money.
Yeah.
It went away. The coins, late Roman coins in Britain, all have holes in them because people were just wearing it as jewelry.
Ah,
Couldn't be.
It went completely local. Like it went from being like there were like three. It's an excellent talk. I'll watch it with you guys. It's really well
so they
done.
went from currency to
Barter.
not currency.
They had no money.
They lost.
They had no. They didn't have writing
The,
for
to,
200
the
years.
totems lost their power.
Yeah. They went from having like 3 or 4 big ceramic centers in the south, like Canterbury and stuff, that were distributed all the way to Scotland, all the way to Wales, to being like the pottery styles went to like a 10-mile radius, a 5-mile radius. You were making your own pottery.
Yeah.
You lived in this shitty little pile of dung that you carved a hole in, and you were making your own bowls.
Right, out of the same stuff your house is made out
Yeah.
of.
Yes.
Your walls and your pots
Yeah.
are made of the same thing.
Yeah, or you're living in the one wall of your house is this fine cut masonry because it's the former Colosseum of Canterbury,
Right.
and then you've got this ramshackle thatch roof lean-to that you're living in the baths of Bath, England, down in the bottom.
And yet here we are today with 7 billion people living at a pretty high standard of living,
Unsustainable.
unsustainable. Yeah.
It's going to be a hard landing.
Yeah.
What, do you think there's a possibility of that sort of technological loss?
Absolutely.
Do
They
things
talk
get
about it.
do things get forgotten?
What would you do if you found a USB stick, but there's no
Yeah.
electricity?
Yeah, I
You'd
was
wear it around your neck
I
like
was,
a piece
I
of
was
jewelry.
just watching. Actually, I was just watching a video by the guy that wrote this book on
Yeah.
cuneiform
Yeah.
because he's also an ancient board games
Oh,
specialist.
yeah.
But anyway, he was sort of in the intro to his talk. He was talking about how his little tablet will outlast all the paper in your libraries and all of the digital files on your computers.
Yeah.
And this little tablet will still,
It's-
outlast all of those modes.
Wait, yes and
it's a
no. I mean, the
strong take.
okay, it's
but-
called cuneiform, but when the Middle East, when it switched to parchment,
Mm-hmm.
that's more of a dark age. We have a better. There was a dynasty in Sumer we call it the third dynasty of Ur. They just called it Ur. It's like half of all the recorded documents of the ancient Mesopotamia come from that dynasty. Tens of thousands of cuneiform clay tablets.
Right.
We don't have that much parchment because the parchment disintegrates.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that was his point.
Yeah. Okay, that was.
Is that it's older, but will outlast the
Yeah.
upstarts,
Yeah.
including the USB sticks,
Yeah.
like you were saying.
Yeah. So when the trucks stop running, guys, you don't. At that point, you don't transport enough grain to feed Spokane.
No.
Are they going to grow it all locally? Is Spokane going to be a ruin field with a couple thousand people living in the old city center along the river, taxing people who are going down it with canoes? Because there's no oil. There's no oil near Spokane, and there's no reason to ship the oil to Spokane because there's no economic return on that, right? Oh, okay, so you drove around for a little while.
Yeah.
We shipped you a tanker of oil. Good for you. Lottie fucking da. You weren't able to do anything with the oil. And that conundrum, that microcosm of Spokane in 100 years, is the United States itself. We don't produce enough economic return from the oil that we consume. And that is the corrosion at the heart of the United States economy.
Well, it's even more ironic than that because Spokane is very near a wheat-rich area.
Yeah.
I mean, half the bread in the country may come from eastern Washington.
Yeah. But it's all grown with oil.
Yeah.
Is it gonna turn
that's
into-
why even more ironic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it going to turn
Right.
into small farms? Itty bitty 5 acres of a guy doing it by hand?
Yeah, I don't even.
And there's this massive machine rusting away that's a former combine.
And the dams on the
swather.
Columbia River are no longer running. And, I mean,
The electricity's out.
they need the water.
They need the water,
Yeah.
and the pumps aren't running because there's no oil to keep them going, and you can't get the part because it was made in China.
Yeah.
That's why I'm always blab. We're close to water here, west of the Cascades. No, seriously, it's you could go to a Renaissance level of economic development west of the Cascades.
Yeah.
We're close enough to water, transport. We have enough rain. You can grow enough veggies. The climate isn't too harsh in the winter. Not bad. We could look like Holland after their independence from Spain.
Well,
The Dutch miracle.
I'd almost say not just here, but the polar sides of what are called eastern boundary currents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
New Zealand has the same climate we do.
Sure.
Chile.
And sure. It's the way the climate works. Is that when climate change happens, it's not going to affect our temperature that much. It may there be more extremes and maybe more rain, but it's
Right.
still going to be buffered because we're in that
Yeah.
higher latitude part of what are called eastern boundary currents, where the currents split and
It brings the rain all winter.
yeah.
And that, unlike Arizona or Colorado,
Oh, those are the places that are doomed. Really,
They're
well,
already-
they already are.
they already are.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just Arizona, but it's at other similar regions of climate on a simple model that are having that problem.
and all they do, whenever they talk, it's just like build more dams, more irrigation. the same, you're nature. Evolution is the lathe of heaven. Go ahead and fight against nature. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Just irrigate more, kill your fresh water more. Good for you. You bought yourself 5 years of more of the same.
Well,
And when that problem returns, it's even bigger.
yeah. Well, yeah. I'm here as this, as a naturalist. The problem is really deep. Natural selection acts, as we talked last time about, into the next generation. Capitalism, we didn't talk about, I guess, in this sense, only looks for this year's profit. And if we don't think longer term and understanding the longer term, we did talk about this last time, of our origins and how this all happened, we really are not going to,
We're going to tread the same path.
yeah, it's just going to
Over
keep
and over
going
again.
and going. But the power of the economics rules the world. Where the money is try to solve the problem. So can it solve the problems? No. There's finite resources. There's too many people that don't understand and rather to believe either the history is working on their side. That's what they believe.
They have
really
to,
do.
right,
Yeah, they
right.
do. If they're in power, they all do.
Right.
And other people that deny history. Half the Americans believe that the Earth apparently is 6,000 years old. It just astonishes me.
It doesn't astonish me. How many prayers have been offered to gods? Nobody's listening. They never actually get an answer back.
Yeah.
Right. So the fact that it continues to happen doesn't surprise you.
No, it doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me. And we're talking about religion. Okay, religion or like deep-seated beliefs. It would be very inconvenient if God or the gods actually showed up. If they actually showed up in church and said, "Yeah, I really meant it when I said don't kill each other or love your neighbor," the Christians would be running screaming out of there. No?
I'd be doing okay on certain fronts and not so okay
Yeah.
on other fronts.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we say capitalism as if it is ideology. It's better to think of it as a religion. It
Well,
truly.
I agree.
And
Well, I agree.
yeah,
I agree. Who would want to get into a debate the difference between ideology and religion? I agree. Capitalism is an ideology, and it is like religion, in that they believe that history's on their side,
yeah,
and just as all the religions think history.
Yeah.
I'm the Yellow Emperor is the son of heaven, and
Sure.
and on and on and on.
Sure.
But God did visit us in the form of a white male, a Western white male. That's how it happened.
Yes.
That's what happened.
I've seen the pictures.
Yeah.
We
Sure.
know what he looks like.
Yeah. Uncle Sam even looks like it.
Yeah. What a surprise.
Yeah.
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus.
Yeah.
I never thought about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
well,
father Christmas passed away when I was barely 7. At 21, alack a day, I lost my hope of heaven. But not in either lies the curse. The worst of it's because I don't know which loss hurt the worst, my God or Santa Claus. Robert Service.
Well done.
lovely.
Yeah.
Well, Santa Claus can't look like Jesus because he has to look like a bishop of Constantinople.
Right.
Or I believe.
Yeah. I love the Ethiopian Jesus, like the Coptic Ethiopian.
Oh,
church. He's
yeah,
a black dude. What do
Yeah.
you know? You know, like just there. It's just right there. And so it's the little. You'll notice with the TED Talk people who, what a coincidence that they get up there and they talk and they have the same mannerisms as Steve Jobs or all the others.
Mm-hmm.
They're all talking the same way. The medium is the message.
Right.
It's all tweaking at the edges what they're talking about.
And yet their audience would hate the televangelist.
Yeah.
and
Wouldn't they?
say,
That's-
tisk, 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 these charlatans.
Yep.
Billy Gray.
Yeah.
I can't.
That's
I'm only
that's
gonna
a
name-
good point.
Is
I
there a
didn't-
Tammy? Yeah, I'm not going to be
Yeah.
able to name more than one televangelist.
Dude,
But anyway,
Haggard.
the TED audience
Haggard, yeah.
would feel very
Yeah.
secure and feeling
Yeah.
superior.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
And
and yet, like you pointed out,
Yeah, you have a Malcolm
It's-
Gladwell sitting there like, oh, the secret to all our problems is change this one little fucking thing. It's like, I'm glad you have a career, Malcolm. You know, I really am. But oh God.
I don't know if yeah.
Yeah, I could do without him. Yeah.
No, actually, these days I've been lazy. There have been some things that I meant to read when I heard of them and then never read. And then
I haven't read his recent one. I
Yeah.
have read a couple of them, and they were somewhat. I mean, made me think.
Yeah. Well,
I
yes.
don't even remember what they are now, but at my age, that's forgivable.
Sure.
It's understandable.
Sure, but it's I see
Like
it
all
and I
the-
just go berserk. You know, at the books you've had me read, like the one I mean,
Which one?
Sapiens, like that
Oh.
one passage. I just like I was fuck
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I wrote over that paragraph. I'm
Yeah.
sorry for
Yeah.
defacing the book, but I was so angry with that fatuous superficiality. Just you know, here we go. It's I can't stand it because I know it better than they do. You know?
Well, but doesn't he help people understand that we're all rooted in history?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, I mean, that
But-
to me is what gives it its worth.
Right, but then he takes it and twists it into a colonial narrative.
Yeah.
He does, and it's and so ending up with like, oh, we can. This we're talking about the book *Sapiens*.
Yeah.
And I don't want to turn this into a book review podcast.
Yeah.
I want to just use that type of book and like the TED Talk type of people to say they are the priests in charge of public relations to make sure people keep believing what they're supposed to believe.
Yeah.
That's their role.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that they're sincere or not.
Yeah.
All those ancient religions were also utterly sincere. They weren't, oh, this is what we believe because this is our religion and wink,
Yeah.
wink. We know sacrificing humans to the sun god is just a propaganda mechanism. No, they actually believed it.
Yeah.
It was utterly sincere. It was a holy act, and they were keeping the universe going.
Yeah.
Just like our goddamn Malcolm Gladwells and all this other stuff.
Most people would rather believe than understand.
Yeah. And it's not even that. It's like, I mean, I've had my disillusionment. I've had some really hard years. I was a good kid. I did what I believed what I was supposed to growing up, and I wanted to contribute to my society and be a good boy and get the accolades of my elders. And then it was like between environmental crisis, understanding the scale and the longevity of the damage we are doing with a mass extinction and the invasions of Iraq and the financial crisis of 2008. What do you do when you actually live as an actual, like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And you're going to, and the lights are going to go out on you in
Yeah.
the 2030s.
Yeah.
And you will literally not be able to go to the grocery store. The peak oil thing is going to sweep over all of our institutions, all of our ideas. It will shatter us to the core. We will have to rediscover what it means to be a human being, an animal,
An
on
evolved thing
the
this-
land,
on this little tiny planet, with
staring
this
at the
thin
sky,
atmosphere.
staring at the sky, and there's nothing supernatural that's going to bring back your life on interacting with screens and media.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to work the soil from dawn to dusk.
Yeah.
I've done it myself. I did it on purpose.
Yeah.
And I have that sense of exhaustion, but also that sense of satisfaction. And I think of my compatriot, my fellow Americans, and I'm like, oh, guys, you're gonna get a lot of blisters on your hands.
Well, when you say that, I just have to say that I think I understand what you're saying. When I taught, I would always teach in my evolution part of my introductory evolution class. So what happened? Here are the Europeans, the white Europeans, who all of a sudden they're discovering all this diversity and
Yeah.
in the world. And how do you come to grips with that? How can we explain that? Here are all these different races
Yeah.
and all this. And what they did was they said, well, obviously Adam was white. And
Adam
all
and
these-
Eve. Adam and Eve.
Well, yeah, well,
Yeah, right.
Eve came of a slightly stiff organ from down here. You understand? About that long.
The raven.
Yeah, but
Generous.
Huh?
Right, yeah.
Well, you know, I
Right,
have
right,
to. Well, they can't tell on here, but my point is that here they said, okay, well, all these other cultures obviously degenerate. I can give you a quote from Oliver Goldsmith, written in the 18th century. How can you explain this? He says in the History of Animated Nature. How can you explain this? Well, obviously, the other people have changed a lot. That's because there's albinos that appear up in all these other cultures.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have all this degeneration that occurred because of the rigor of the climate and the scarcity of the provisions. So they all turned worse. And of course, the whites didn't change. Now, what happens after Darwin? Darwin says we evolved from the same apes. Well, so what did the Westerners do? Well, they all said we evolved the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
You understand? I could quote Spencer who quoted Haeckel, and so on. Well, what did the capitalists do with Darwin? They loved him. Carnegie was preaching in the churches. Darwin is right because he said there's competition amongst individuals.
Right.
What did Marx say? Marx wanted to dedicate Das Kapital to Darwin because
know
there's
that.
this truth, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then here's this competition among classes. What did Haeckel do? It's the competition of races, and obviously the Aryans have outdone the rest.
The Europeans have outdone you.
Yeah. So,
What a coincidence that they kept their supremacy.
yeah, of course. One by changing the most, one by changing the least.
Yeah.
I mean, so this bias. But this is what we must understand. We're all rooted in history. I think maybe I said last time, but I've said this to other people. Any intellectual that doesn't recognize he's a historian is not an intellectual. He's rooted in history. Even his ideas, his
Right.
personhood, everything.
Yes.
And we live in a world that's trapped in history. There are no miracles.
Yeah. Everything is accounted for.
Yeah.
There are
yeah.
no contradictions in nature.
Yeah, so it's here we live in a
There's no remainder in the calculus of the universe.
Yeah.
As-
Every molecule of fossil fuels traps some heat. You can't wish it away.
yeah. No.
Just the sheer and I mean that's kind of what I'm like. You have to believe in that. Oh, I gotta because you have to believe that your inner piety or you have to believe in a relationship between your inner experiences as a human, as a person, as a conscious being, to the outer universe. I also succumb to that, and my bad nights are the ones where I do realize it is indifferent, and the sun will go out, whole universes come and go. I mean, we could get into how the universe ends. Eventually, space itself is expanding. Time is a net that grabs things, but time itself is expanding as the universe itself expands. And eventually, the holes in the net get so big that it can't catch anything.
Yeah.
It goes completely flat and dark, a completely flat universe. But then, somehow, you rip a hole in it. And what's a hole in nothingness? Somethingness. A universe. So I do understand that. And so the indifference of nature, you have to go all the way through it. You cannot fall back on the old myths. And that's the real cynicism, to pretend to believe. So yes, I am a part of the universe. You have to go all the way, but I completely understand the fear and terror of looking up at that night sky and realizing there is nobody looking back. There are no gods. There is nothing supernatural.
Okay, here's the irony, and with a little sense of humor, I
Sure.
guess. Gravity, Newton. This is sort of the basis of modern science, right? It's precisely described. We don't know a shit about gravity.
No.
It is the most mysterious thing around.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the universe doing? Is dark energy, dark matter, and they have to invent this stuff to
Yeah.
account for data. I'm defending them.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
understand.
Well, right.
I'm defending these
The mo-
scientists.
Physicists. Yeah.
Okay, now, as a scientist, as a biologist, we understand the grave. And I say it in this way. We have theories for the evolution. How can senescence evolve? How can cells evolve to kill themselves.
To die.
How can organisms like salmon that go up and die, how can that happen? How can there be genes that control that? We have very good theory. So I like to say we understand the grave better than we understand gravity. And let me tell you a coincidental fact. This is my sense of humor now coming in. Newton died in about the year of this calendar, about the number of kilometers down, that is the center of gravity between the Earth and the Moon. Now, did Newton get the point, or did the point get Newton? Sorry for my sense of humor, but
Shit, oh no, please,
it's true.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and this is going to be badly paraphrased, but there's something cute they say about Newton, that he wasn't the first modern scientist, he was the last wizard,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. He did a thing like with optics. He shoved an arrow in his eye.
He was just poking around.
Yeah,
in there,
and
right?
bent it to understand until he saw the image change, just to understand like this is a physical thing. It's not an Aristotelian.
Listen, what we have to do with Newton is understand him, not
Yeah.
revere him.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
what we have to do. We
You
have to
don't-
understand, what did he do that got us so far?
You mustn't revere anything.
Nothing. I agree. I agree.
yeah,
And I'm a Darwinian. I
right.
don't revere Darwin, but if I
Or in a way-
could have dinner with anybody, it would be,
yeah.
you know.
Right, and when I say that, it's we mustn't revere anything in isolation. The reverence for literally every physical event is sacred. Strangely enough, every molecule
Every molecule has been
is
been
accounted
here since the stars formed them. I mean,
What do you thi-
every atom.
since before.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a thing. Right? Nothing exists in isolation.
Yeah. No.
Well, now we're getting.
Right. So
Well-
anyway, peak oil.
Well,
So
don't know.
what we have to do, what scientists have to do, and I really mean this, and this is the mistake that economics is not a science. They're traders. Scientists, real scientists, not economists, are traders to the human species because they have refused to get their hands dirty and take political power and religious power from the European colonial historical narrative. They're sitting there inventing things and behaving irresponsibly and empowering people like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Bill Clinton. I mean, they're sitting there. They are serving the common
they're like-
enemies of all humankind.
they're like theoretical mathematicians, but the dark version.
Yes,
because they're
it's-
just sitting
it's a
around
trope.
playing with constructions.
It's a
but-
trope of the evil emperor or the bad guy in his evil lair in a cave. And who does he always have? This little mincing scientist, right? He's
yeah,
sitting
yeah.
there.
Oh, yes, sir. The experiments have gone exceedingly well, and these flying
War
right,
monkeys are
right.
50% more powerful than the other ones. It's a trope, and we
Yeah.
know it. But think about it.
Right,
The
it's
science-
not. It's not the It's not the Dark Lord. It's the Dark Lord's mincing.
Yes.
who's probably fudging things
Yes.
and
My
lying
lord,
to him.
This poison
Yeah.
gas is more stronger than
Right.
That's
He's not even doing good science necessarily
and
because
it-
he's got the onus of the expectation of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just following orders.
Well, I would call these people technologists,
Yes.
but not scientists. Scientists are the ones that have deepened our understanding of who we are and where we are in this universe.
But they refused to get their hands dirty and actually take on capital, to fight it openly and sincerely actually fight it. Right? They just want their tenure.
What do you-
They want to do pure research.
What do you want to do? Take their atomic weapons and shoot them at the capitalists? I mean,
No,
No.
I'm not being trite.
yeah.
Look at China. China is taking on the West, all of it, and they've got Russia as their partner, and they're sitting there and they are drawing a line. They're not fighting like a Western civilization, but they are drawing a line and they're saying, no, we are not going to let you keep doing what you're doing. And the Westerners are going berserk because they've never encountered a peer competitor in 600 years.
Yeah.
They actually think that they can go in there and knock over China like it's the Incan Empire or something. Like, well, if you're not going to give us your stuff for free, we're gonna send in the army. And it's like, no, you're fucking not. The Marines, the Marines couldn't take Shanghai.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're going berserk, and you have to think to yourself, like, there are real Marxists, there are real scientists, there is an actual opposition now
Yeah.
to Western colonialism,
Yeah.
and it's working.
Well,
So yeah, your imagination has been truncated. How do scientists pull the fangs out of capital?
well, I know, but I'm saying to me, science has led to, I think, an enlightenment.
Yes,
I am.
we're talking about two different things.
Okay.
We are.
I mean, my understanding is, I think, a pretty concrete understanding or realistic understanding of my place and how I got here.
Yes.
With billions of years of history, contingency. I mean, shit happens. If I hadn't been born a white male, my life would have been very different. If I hadn't been born a male, my life. If I hadn't been born the third born in a family of 5 kids, my life would have been. If I hadn't been born in 1941, I have no soul.
Right. So much so that even the statement "if I hadn't been" is almost not accurate.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
As if
Yeah.
you hadn't been born whatever you were.
Yeah.
That I is gone.
But I mean, we do understand that we are products of a long history. I mean, I understand that. Most people don't. And
But that's what I'm getting at. Like, there's always the common people are infinite and eternal. They will always be with us. It is the scientist's responsibility not to say, I'm waiting for the common people, for the scientifically illiterate to catch up to me, and then we'll build a better world. No, you must take full responsibility for the common people
Wait,
and fight
but that's
against
a
and
moral
fight.
person's responsibility. That's every person's
Yes.
responsibility.
Yes,
Right.
but
Who
what-
do you mean when you say scientist? Do you mean the same person that Muggs said any intellectual who doesn't
That's-
realize they're a
yeah,
historian?
fair
Is
enough.
it the same person
Fair
you're
enough.
talking about?
That's a good, yeah. So like, let's call them a scientifically literate person who understands history, who understands that they're a historian.
Right. So
and then
I think you might. Maybe that's not correct to say, but you're using different words for
Yes.
the same archetype in your head.
Yeah.
right. I'm not talking about the mincing guy who builds the poison gas. For
Well,
the
no,
emperor.
not that guy.
Right.
But nor are you just talking about someone whose job it is to literally perform the act of science,
No.
which is
Right.
observation and data and reproducibility.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you're not talking about
I'm
that
not
guy
talking about
either.
a lab technician. Yeah,
No.
I'm talking of
Which
yeah.
is how science is made, depending on right.
Right, but I would,
And-
like that way of understanding the world.
Sure,
Like,
but well,
to be-
another distinction I'm sort of curious about is you were talking about gravity and how we don't understand much about it, and this might be a sort of an interpretation or. I like to buy kids books to learn things, and I was at Goodwill one time and I got like an old out of date
Oh.
science textbook
Okay.
for like an elementary school student, and it made the point that Galileo was sort of one of the first proper scientists because he didn't try to answer the why question, he just
Yes.
tried to
How.
answer the how question.
Yes,
right,
that's-
so it's not science's job to tell us why gravity works. The
Right.
fact that we can build models that help us predict how gravity works, that's the extent of science in one
yes.
form of understanding the
I
work,
agree.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm saying.
Right,
I'm not
right,
talking
right,
about
right.
that
That's
kind
what I
of
thought.
person.
Right, you're not talking about the
Yeah.
how, the
Right.
I can build a model to predict future behavior. You're
Yeah.
sort of
I'm talking about like that to be as truthful and open about understanding ourselves and the universe as possible, and to not turn it and to not just let this other narrative take over.
Well, I think that's what science is.
Sure.
And it's a social thing. It's not this little genius or savior or
Right. It's
Or-
always teams.
it has to be organized. And it has to pay attention to history.
Right.
The real history, not the imagined history, not the history of look, we're products of evolution.
Right.
We were swinging in trees
Not very
20,
long.
like just a few million years ago.
But I can be told that and tell you I understand it, but I don't know what the fullness of the realization. I don't know how understanding, because you've said a few times believing is easier than understanding, and or no, you actually it's better than that. You've said people would rather prefer, which I think is sort of interesting language, and not to just
I'm
sort of
quoting
mince
E.O. Wilson.
words. But I don't think it. I mean, I would sort of posit that it might not be a preference. It might be a natural inclination of our humanity.
Well,
right?
E.O. Wilson also wrote the book Human Nature. We are evolved animals, and you're right.
Right.
It's
It seems
because
very
we're not
human to
created in
me.
the image of some white, all-intelligent, omniscient male. We are products of evolution. And
But we're
females-
susceptible to those stories. Is
well,
the,
that's
is
wh-
the trouble.
Well, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
And this is where I think the tribal part of our history and the competition, and I'm not an anthropologist and archaeologist, but my guess is that in our evolution, this competition among tribes, you also had to have outbreeding. Otherwise, genetically, there's a problem. But competition amongst tribes, and this fascism that's rising, I think comes from that part of our evolutionary history. I really do. This belief in, the fact that the three of us are white is a contingent. We could be dark. If natural selection had favored red, we could have been red or yellow or whatever color. It's a contingent event. It's a contingent thing.
Yes.
It really is.
It's arbitrary.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
could be anything. And that's what doctors butter side up, butter side down, or
Yeah.
like the.
Huh.
I agree. Like what is it? Reynolds number or Dunbar's number? 150 strong. Yeah, and then that's about the maximum size of hunter-gatherers communities.
Reynolds number has to do with viscosity.
Oh,
and
that's right.
Size.
Yeah, yeah.
If you have a small or big Reynolds number, you're not going to move very fast through
sticky.
a fluid.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is why the Star Wars movies where they have these
Yeah, yeah.
have these jet ships making these right angle
Oh,
turns.
yeah, it's a joke.
It can't happen.
No, but the number where it's about 150 people you can know, and above that you have to have a more organized political structure because it can't be
Interesting.
based on personal
Because
relationships.
I've heard numbers about how many people you can know before, but
Can't
I
believe
haven't.
I got that
had,
wrong.
had never.
Thank you, Monks.
had never thought to apply that idea to.
Yeah,
Obviously, that would that would be the threshold where.
right. And it's and so the fascist aspect, it's an imagined historic community that has no historical basis.
Yeah.
And so you can. Yeah, I follow. There's a fascist blog guy. He has he's a little Nazi, and I follow him just to kind of keep in touch with what the Nazis are thinking.
I think we have to be careful with our language. When you say you follow him, that means
Oh,
he's
yeah.
doing something in technology, not.
Right. I look at his
You
website.
understand?
I
if
check
I'm
in.
a follower of Jesus or
Oh,
Trevor
yeah.
Mao,
Right,
you understand?
Right.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. It's good to know.
Right. You're
But
not
it's-
following him like a Sam Spade either.
No.
Yeah.
He
No.
was being all thumbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do this. I do the same thing with. You have to check Fox News from time to time because they're letting you know what they're up to. Yeah. And it's complete. It's amazing to see the look. Trying to tie this back into the peak oil thing. After America disintegrates, okay, think of it this way. When the British Empire was swept into the dustbin of history, the United States was able to take its place, right? After the American Empire is swept into the ash pit of history, Trotsky's famous, who will take America's place? Wonderful silence, isn't it? It's not Canada. It's not
Could be
Brazil.
China.
No.
No.
No, China is not a Western imperial power.
Oh, you said Western. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like 600 years of European colonialism is drawing to an end right before your eyes. And that's why you see this. The people of Fox News and the people of that Nazi website I look at, they are very aware of that at a subconscious level. And so that's why it's so frantic what's happening right now in terms of our foreign policy and our political dysfunction in Washington, D.C., and our overall cultural dysfunction, where we're just like, should we help the Kurds or should we betray them? Did we betray the Kurds or were we right to get out of the Middle East? Should we withdraw from the Middle East or should we do it? A guy I know was talking about what China's doing in Xinjiang against the Uyghurs, and I laughed in his face because I was like, well, what if maybe the Chinese should just hunt them down with drones like animals and kill them like we do, like we've been doing for over a decade? And
For centuries.
but that narrative, we can feel it. We can feel like, wait a minute, something's wrong in the heart of our economy and our economic power, and something is wrong with our military. We shouldn't have to still be fighting the Taliban. These Yemeni rebels, the Houthis or whoever, shouldn't be able to strike back against Saudi Arabia. And so that's when we disintegrate, we are the last Western colonial power.
So what's the Western power that will replace us?
None.
No.
Right.
North America
you're
breaks
saying
up.
There's no heir apparent.
There is no heir apparent.
No.
Exactly, and that's the frantic nature. That's why.
Do you think that's related to the
I really do.
to the sort of anxiety?
Yeah.
And not just that.
We invaded Iraq in 2003 because we had to.
So it's not.
We had to. It was the last desperate Hail Mary attempt. We can't tell Iran what to do. Iran just found an oil field with 56 billion barrels of oil in it. Oh yeah, you're going to sanction people like that? Sitting on a prize like that, huh? Is the international financial system switching away from the U.S. dollar? The SWIFT system?
So, okay. Now, when you say that thing with the oil in Iran,
Right.
what about the oil in Russia? Is this one reason that
Yes.
Trump is kissing up to Putin, or is
Oh,
that something?
okay.
I think it's probably something
Okay.
different.
Okay. Don't say his name. It's worrying about what Trump thinks is like worrying about what an 8-year-old thinks. Like, oh, well, this 8-year-old
Well,
said,
it's my kid.
right. Sure. But no, you can't. Trump explains nothing. He analyzes nothing. He's nothing at all. Okay, he's just himself.
But that's why his supporters are.
His supporters don't know anything about Russia, and they don't care. He's their god emperor, whatever.
Yeah.
He could say blue is now red, and they'd be like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
sure. So don't worry about that. But what I mean is, Russia is going to be an oil exporting country for the next century, and
Well,
the United States is an oil importing
But you
country.
just said we're going to run out of oil in 15 years for the trucks.
The world will be split into those with fossil fuels and those without.
Okay.
The United States doesn't have enough. And so we are already those without. And so
Right, and earlier-
North America will disintegrate painfully and slowly. It'll take decades, right?
Yeah.
You'll be, the central government will be the Marines going around. The U.S. military is going to start doing to U.S. cities where protests are happening and these liberal types, they're going to start doing to them what we did to Mosul, what we did to Fallujah. Your future looks more like the Gaza Strip, and it will be the U.S. military shelling places like Spokane or whatever. That will be what starts happening in North America. Russia is going to be like, oh, okay, well, we're still we're willing to keep the lights on and the natural gas flowing to Western Europe for the next 2 winters, but then we're going to drop that contract. They have a lot of natural gas. They have a whole fucking lot of oil.
Well,
So
that's
does
why I brought
Iran.
up Russia with Trump.
Yes.
I mean, is there somebody behind Trump that recognizes
No,
that?
this is fate. This is our identity.
Yeah.
We cannot help this.
Yeah.
There was Trump is the fate of America, and this fate could not be stayed. But it's deeper than that. The United States could have a viable future. It could work on paying off its debts. But America does not. America is the mythology and the religion. The United States is the practicalities of license plates and passports and those sorts of things, and infrastructure,
Yeah.
municipal bonds. That's the United States. It could have a viable future, but not as long as it's tied to the myth of America. And America does not have the future. So believe it or not, America is the millstone around the United States' neck, dragging it down into the ash heap of history. I'm not joking.
That's Trotsky, you said?
That's Trotsky, yeah. He said that to the Mensheviks. Go then where you belong in the ash heap of history. And he was right.
Yeah.
The Mensheviks wanted to split the difference. They wanted, let's not be radical, blah, blah. The Bolsheviks were like, no, we need to really actually change things.
Yeah.
And look who was right. So,
Who was
What-
right?
Trotsky.
Well, he's dead.
Right, but the Bolsheviks won.
Yeah.
Look. I mean, we owe a very big debt of gratitude to Vladimir Lenin.
Yeah.
He did it. He brought a Marxist revolution to an ancient empire. Marxists ended feudalism from the Rhine River to the Mekong River. That vast swath of Eurasia. They did it, I mean, in China too. The Chinese Marxists
it's
would never have succeeded without the Russians.
Yeah.
You know, they needed that help and they needed that example. They ended feudalism in the heart of feudal.
In my lifetime in
In-
China.
yes.
In my lifetime in
It's
China.
extraordinary. What a victory.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reason China's doing well today, one reason among very many, is because they killed all their landlords.
And bragged about it.
And bragged about it. There was no, it was like, could you imagine? Like, weep for your landlords, wring your hands. Like, they were sucking the blood of their own people for centuries. And they were also the local elites. Yeah, it's not a black and white, but to capitalists sit there and go, think of all those rents that aren't getting paid. All the money not getting made.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
So, yeah, one reason why North America is going to disintegrate is because of peak oil. It needs it's like hypoxia. It's like a body running out of oxygen, right? The reason you have to breathe is because that oxygen is what unlocks your energy source.
it's like a vole.
Yes. So think of peak oil is like running out of oxygen and for a body. And so, but
Well, usually
The
that spells that's not a good sign for its contingent parts either.
right. But unlike
This is where the analogy breaks.
This is where the analogy breaks. So the main body dies, the thing holding it together, but the little limbs at the extremities have viable futures on their own economically. Places like the Deep South will break off and be like, no, we're going to do our own thing. Texas could be its own place again, you know, and California and Cascadia and Alaska. Like, why? It's already happening. It is already happening. Puerto Rico needs help from the federal government to rebuild itself. And the federal government's like, yeah, whatever. Puerto Rico should go get a loan from China.
Yeah.
Straight up fucking do it, guys. Be
Yeah.
like, we're joining the BRICS Bank. We're joining the Belt and Road Initiative because Washington, D.C. apparently doesn't care about us, which they don't. And they don't care about infrastructure. Build high-speed rail in Puerto Rico with Chinese help. You'd want to talk about sending in the Marines? The Washington, D.C. would bomb Puerto Rico to nothing and kill all of them before they allowed that to happen. Hawaii should join the Belt and Road Initiative on their own. Fuck Washington, D.C. They can't do anything right anyway, even if their intentions were good. Ooh, we got to be careful. You can't say that.
So far, none of these have gone anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Although that's not
Right.
true. We've
Yeah.
shared them.
We've shared a few
via
of them, yeah.
email.
I'll send you the email
Yeah.
if you see if you get it. But yeah, that's so the local because the component parts of North America have viable economic futures of their own, even when it's broken apart. That's why it'll never be put back together.
Some of
And
them.
that's why we are the last imperial power. And it's ending right now. If it was 1987 and you're a Russian who doesn't know quite what to think about the future. And you like you have a government job with the Soviet Union, but you're getting some real bad news out of Afghanistan, and your oil exports are kind of collapsing. And because one reason the Soviet Union fell apart was oil prices were so low. Truly, they couldn't balance their budget, even with all that fossil fuels. Right. Bad news is coming out of Afghanistan, and there's protests in Poland and things like that, and your leadership is all old people who don't understand what's going on. You
have to worry about Poland as a late 80s Russian?
Yeah. Warsaw. Yeah. I mean, and Berlin. Right. Those are all your colonies, and just protests never end, and the political dysfunction can't seem to work itself out. And boy, that national debt's sure getting big. And you probably said, if you were a young man, well, I know what I want my future to be, so I will change my analyses accordingly. I won't think about what's actually going on. I'll just stick to the plan and then modify my observations. See it
differently.
Yeah, right, I'll go, well, it'll probably be all right. Blah, blah, blah. And then
you change your interpretation rather than changing your behavior.
Yep. And you go, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'll have a podcast with that old guy and my friend, and we'll talk about our problems. and then you have this other senile leader come in, and he tries to open it up, but the problems are too great. And then, geez, do you default on your national debt? What do you do? And then it's 1989, and suddenly there's no Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Where does that leave you?
Where does that leave you? Well,
The
90s in Russia were amazing. People were bartering vodka for food, asset stripping. Foreign people with real money came in and bought up everything, got nailed down. That was worth buying.
Right.
The heat turned off in apartments. People froze to death in that cold winter.
Yeah.
Alcoholism, suicide.
What year was that?
The 90s. Mm-hmm. So like 89 was the fall of the Berlin Wall, and then 91 was the dissolution. Gorbachev, who's still alive. It's astonishing.
He's shooting McDonald's commercials and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he has in a while.
One of his nicknames is Mishka the Marked because of that birthmark. Because a lot of Russians really don't like what he did, and they're like, we didn't have to sell out. Yes, we had to reform, but it didn't have to go the way it went. He sold out Russia to Western financial interests. And then Putin brought it back.
But are the Western financial interests still in Russia?
No.
Yeah.
Putin came in 2001.
Out, but then what did he do?
Gorbachev or
no?
What are we
Putin.
talking?
You said Putin sold out.
No. I said Gorbachev did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, Putin. So, oh God, I mean, Putin was kind of put in there as somebody they thought they could control and manipulate because he was young. He didn't have a huge power base of his own, ex-KGB agent, kind of a nobody. He came in after Yeltsin. Yeltsin appointed him, I think. And, Yeltsin was a joke. He was alcoholic, nothing. But, he wasn't he worked for Western interests. He allowed Western financial interests to strip Russia. Putin came in and very cleverly and wisely and with discipline, such discipline, brought Russia back. He was helped by high oil prices in the aughts, very high oil prices. They made a killing. Russia has no national debt. Zero. And the debt in all of Russia per Russian is $900. Credit card debt, business debt, municipality debt.
What's ours?
Yeah.
It's about is it 160,000?
Mine's zero, but
yeah, personally, but as an American, as a United Statesian,
yeah.
I mean, like the Russian national debt is zero.
Even the net. I mean,
yes, they paid it
now
off.
I got it.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They're getting ready to asset strip us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. The other person has has immense debts that they'll never be able to pay off. $1 trillion a year is just our deficit of our federal government.
Right.
That's just the deficit. Okay, so $1 trillion, and then 12 months later, $2 trillion, and then 3 years later, $3 trillion, and then the next at the next presidential election, there'll be $4 trillion more dollars added to our debt. We can't pay it back. Yeah. This is the trap. We can't raise interest rates because the debt is too great on every level, business debt as well. You know, like all those fracking companies are up to their ears in debt. They can't pay it back. They cannot pay it back even if the price of oil went up to $200 a barrel. I've seen it. This is public information. They have to, you know, these are public traded companies. So here we go. They can't raise interest rates because if they did, the interest payments on the debt alone would swamp all budgets of state governments and businesses.
Shouldn't laugh.
And so what's the interest rate now of the federal government? What is it?
Zero. Isn't
It's
it?
essentially zero. And if you look at cost of living and inflation figures, it's actually negative. So you lend money out and it's like, oh, I'll make 0.25% on this loan, right? So this starts to cause inflation. Well, the only way to fight inflation is by raising interest rates, which they can't do. And so that's how they'll get us. So, you know, you'll start defaulting on. So, okay, so there's the hyperinflation right there. Past becomes future inflation, money shortages, shelves clear out, the end of lend, scorched money, and then currency death. There's no more repeatable pattern that I have found in human history than hyperinflation. Humans behave the same way whether they're in ancient Rome or in Hungary in the 30s. It's really quite something. And so that's how they'll stop paying the troops. They'll have to abandon military bases. They'll have to certainly not invest in infrastructure or research.
So how about in art, literature, and science?
What?
How about investing in art, literature, and science?
Investing what? Your worthless currency?
No. Investing our minds.
Okay. Like scientists taking control.
No.
And when I say, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a broader.
What I'm saying is that we have these people in history who have been great artists, great scientists, great moral leaders.
Yes.
If we can invest in those, and it won't work because economics rules, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah.
I mean, we've had great leaders, great ideas,
Yes.
justice, truth, honesty,
Right.
fairness.
Well, and that's what I mean when I
Generally aren't attributed to one person, though, right?
No, but they are. But you could take Gandhi, Jesus, Buddha. Buddha recognized suffering.
Cyrus the Great.
Huh?
Cyrus the
Yeah,
Great.
Cyrus the Great. Yeah,
True.
I mean, there are people that did that. I mean, there are even emperors that did.
Yeah.
But so I don't. I don't know. So what we invest in? What do we invest in? I say we lack understanding. We'd rather believe something.
Right.
Right? How do we increase understanding? I think it's hopeless, actually.
Oh boy. Well, I don't think it's hopeless. I do think that this fight is the eternal fight. Like in some other galaxy, somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy, there's some
Far away.
right. There's some aquatic species. They look like a squid dolphin or something, and they're having a little podcast underwater with echolocation.
Octopodcast.
Yeah, octopod. Hey, oh.
Cephalopod, brain.
Yeah. Cephalopodcast. Yeah.
Solid.
Damn.
I got cephalopods on my notes.
There you
too.
go.
We were talking about
They're-
mollusks.
Yeah,
so-
they're sitting there talking about their history and their shared history and how do you prevent the rapaciousness of the powerful?
Yeah.
You know, power accumulates and then
And it
destroys
corrupts.
itself and it corrupts.
Yeah.
And so these patterns are universal and that's what you must do. That is what you must do as a conscientious, conscious being. That's it. That's all. That is the only
What must you do?
to be as truthful as you can and to fight for the common good. That's it.
Well, I mean, the Buddha said it. Look, the Buddha.
There's no magic formula.
No, but other people agree with you. Buddha said, I was born rich.
Yeah.
I didn't choose to do that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
There's suffering. So what can I do?
Yes.
I can help suffering. What did Jesus say? I think he said the same thing. Gandhi. With Gandhi, it wasn't the suffering, it was the political injustice. And I think for Jesus too. But the thing is, I'm sort of with the Buddha here. Relieve the suffering.
Yes.
And help the Democrats and liberals and the environment. Send all the money you can to WWF and all that stuff.
Well, right. This isn't right. Okay. Yes.
But I mean, you're as a person living here now,
Yeah.
you have a moral choice. That's all I can do.
But that's a strange sort of model to follow, saying I'm with the Buddha, relieve suffering. Like, I'm
Right.
not very, I'm not an expert on the mythology of the Buddha and his enlightenment and then his ministry, but the stories that come to mind aren't ones of practical relieving of suffering. The idea was that his teaching would relieve suffering, right? So
Yeah.
it's one thing to say I'm with the Buddha, relieve suffering, but then are you proposing that all we need to do is spread the right belief, and right belief will somehow pull us all out of the mud? How does the right belief relieve suffering?
I mean, I'm more Taoist. Sure, I'm more Taoist in this. There's a Taoist notion and a they bleed into each other. But do what is necessary and then stop. Do what is necessary and no more. And that's the intersection. Sure, yes, I would think that those those dolphin squid in the Andromeda galaxy
The
would
cephalopodcast.
this doing their set would the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism are just as true for them, and it's just as true for any finite conscious being.
Sure.
Right. The Taoist idea of doing what is necessary takes that eternal truth and hits it at the intersection of your context. Like if you're living in a
interesting.
just country and you have a long history of justice and you have institutions that are actually functional for justice, then I am not anti-government.
Right.
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly I'm not.
Right.
Like you put me in the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great or Artaxerxes III. I think he was called the Shah who loved his people. He was the second. I would serve that government, and I would not.
And would
seek
you
to undermine.
feel warm feelings of nationalism even?
No.
No.
I would. It's cold. There's a coldness to morality. You have to be. It's not about favoritism, But if you put me in an unjust country that I know is going to collapse because I am watching it collapse in real time, that's a different context. And then doing what is necessary becomes extremely different in terms of praxis. What do you do? So this is why I'm like, look, the Chapo Trap House people, the Matt Christman who think that there can be socialism in Washington, D.C., are you fucking kidding me? This is the United States. Mm-hmm. The United States needs to go. Not because it will not work. Socialism is not possible in a right-wing reactionary country and culture like ours. You can't do it if you have 150 million common people, voters, who slobber and explode at the very idea of socialism, even though in terms of functionality, we are a socialist country. All modern governments are socialist. There's immense government influence in the private market. If that's socialism,
Well,
we can only choose between good socialism and bad socialism.
let's go back to the Buddha and the Tao. I want to.
Okay.
Tao says, it is what it is.
Sure.
Buddha says, it sucks. Confucius says, let's try to do something about it.
The three vinegar tasters.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's, to me, as simple as you can put the whole thing.
Yes. I say when I go into the woods.
That's my trinity, by the way.
Sure. No, that's a good
Fair
one.
enough. Yeah.
I
Although
mean,
sometimes the Confucians make me a little uncomfortable because
Sure.
it's just
Well,
it's sort of inherently conservative as an
all-
ideology,
all
right?
great
Filial
ideas-
piety and all that.
Well, all great ideas are corrupted. They
Sure,
all are.
sure, yeah.
Every one.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, which is nice to have three, and also that's the nice thing about that particular region of the earth is that they don't seem to have as big a problem with orthodoxy as we do as Westerners. It's we can say, oh, I can have three favorites, you know.
Yeah,
I can
fair
pick
enough.
what I want from the Tao and what I want from the Dharma or the
Yeah.
Buddha.
Oh, they do.
And
I
then
mean,
what
that's
I
what-
want from Confucian.
Zen
Yeah.
Buddhism is Chan Buddhism, which was the synthesis in China between Taoism and Buddhism.
Right.
You know, when I go into the forest, I'm a Taoist. When I go out, when I go from the forest back into the town or the city, I'm a Confucian. And when I go to bed at night and look up at the sky, I'm a Buddhist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
I'm-
Taoist.
No, I'm a Taoist in the forest.
Oh, okay.
I'm a Confucian in the town, and I'm a Buddhist when I'm alone with myself at night.
I wish I could remember the joke my friend tells me. I can't remember if the Tao is involved or not. You said first. You said that Tao says it is what it is, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Buddha says, oh, the suffering, it's bad.
Sure.
And Confucius has said, you know, let's try to do something about it. Be
Right.
pragmatic.
Right.
I'm a pragmatist.
Right. I
What
mean,
is Oh, yeah. We don't
if
have
you-
to talk about what Confucius says
if you
to
had
do
to
about
design
it.
a universe, if you had to make one, I don't know if you could make one that didn't have suffering in it. Like, here's your job: make a universe with no
Well,
suffering.
you can't. You can't. And this is, it's taken me a long time in my life to understand suffering is there. It's going to be there forever.
It's the first noble it's page 1. Come on.
Yeah. Right.
No, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's real. I mean, I'm talking about babies.
Oh,
I'm not talking about the lion killing a gazelle.
Right.
Okay.
but that is suffering.
Well,
you
it
know?
is, but it's not.
Evolution, guys.
Well, I guess I put us on a pedestal.
Sure. Okay.
Humans.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
yeah,
And not because we have souls,
Right.
but because we can
Yeah.
empathize.
Right.
I mean, we are capable of that. But so I'm not. There will always be suffering, and the Buddha was right. He knew that. You're not going to stop it. I'm a pragmatist. Let's try to relieve as much as we can. Period.
all you
That's
can
all I honestly think at the end of my life, I send money to charity, and most of it goes to liberals, not to liberals, to environment, and to help kids and hungry people, and then liberals. I mean, those three things. And so, I mean, what can I do? And,
Right.
and come and talk with you guys and bullshit, whatever. it is.
Right. That's all I do. Yeah. Unless I'm, bullshitting with the barflies at the dive
yeah.
bar,
Well, I mean,
And we
Let's
make
go
a
for
we
that.
make a little
I
less
can't drive in
progress,
the dark.
yeah. I mean, I'll say that like I've been working with a bureaucracy of a city for years to try to do something, and it's exhausting. Like talk about the wheel, So, and I'll keep doing it, but this is kind of what I mean when I say like the good emperor or a Vladimir Putin or something to actually practically do what you can.
The Chinese poets understood this.
Yeah.
All poets understand this.
Yeah.
And so, are poets trying to speak the unspeakable? No, they're speaking the speakable. People don't get it. I mean,
It's
And I hate to. It's not a very. I don't know. I don't know what getting it looks like, right? We've said understanding is not, belief and understanding are at odds or something like that, right?
Sure.
And then we say, well, we should all just, if we only read the poets and understood what they were trying to tell us. Well, I can sit here and agree with every lesson you try and impart on me, but I don't see my day tomorrow looking any different than it was already going to.
It's not transactional,
Right?
It's not if I get it, then I'll
Well,
get
what
something in
is it?
return. It's simply necessary. It's,
Well,
I know.
necessary. It's necessary to what?
It's not.
To continued survival. To the is a local
continued-
necessary,
yes, yeah.
or is it a larger necessary,
the-
a personal necessary?
Oh man,
Well, let me put it this way: you started as a single cell. You are here. You will die.
Mm-hmm.
You had no choice being born. You have no choice dying. Are you going to make choices in between? And then
I'm
whatever
gonna
you do,
think I make choices. in
well,
between.
but if then, that's up to you. It's all up to you. You had no choice coming in. You have no choice coming out. There is one history. There could have been many.
Mhm.
There are many futures. There is going to be one. Can you make a difference in between? And that is what I think a life should be.
Mhm.
That's all. Yeah, that's all you can.
That's it.
We could be.
Well, how does
Our species-
understanding
we
the
could-
scale of
We could live. Our average lifespan could be like a bowhead whale's. We could be 300 years old. We could have perfect memories. We could have all sorts of, like all the benefits. Wouldn't it be nice if no disease, and you would still, and let's say you had a just government sort of thing where it's like you could go to your local bureaucracy and say, do this, make this change, and it will positively affect your environment and all life for the foreseeable future in a positive way. Okay, you would still be confronted with an
Right.
infinite future,
right,
infinite
and
universes.
then I'd have less
And
justification to
suffering.
complain, which would be
personally,
kinda shitty,
exactly.
Yeah,
What I do
it's like why
when I drink.
hope I don't get a raise because
Yeah.
then I will be less
Yeah.
justified in
I s-
bitching.
I do it all the time, but what you must not, and I know it's wrong, but what you must not do is let other people's misconduct justify your own.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a shitty world and it's full of shitty people who are dumb and they keep fucking up. Therefore, I get to as well. Nope.
No,
Nope.
peaceful resistance. I mean,
Sure.
honestly,
Sure.
violence leads to violence. I mean, actually, I think Martin Luther King and Gandhi and Mandela made a difference. I think Jesus was sort of a peaceful person. Buddha was. I mean, of course, they become myths, but
Right.
violence is never right.
I err on the side of do what's necessary and no more. There's
I understand.
points-
I
yeah.
understand.
Yeah. I was reading about how the Inca Empire was destroyed, and I wish that it was like the most unlucky set of coincidences you could possibly imagine. It was just like a cartoonish series of bad luck for the Inca. And I'm like, boy, I wish they had used just a teensy bit of violence against the Spanish at first, going in. If they had just been a little bit more like,
Just to sting them, make it look a little less.
yeah, 168 Spaniards were surrounded by 30,000 Inca warriors, fighters, and they managed to capture the emperor. Like, really? They could have used a little violence against.
Well, no, I
Pizarro.
agree, but
So,
apparently, I
yeah.
think there's also evidence that there was also competition amongst those Inca groups.
This isn't the Inca Empire podcast, but but what I'm saying is that it's easy to say peace when you're in the heart of a very violent, dying empire.
Yeah.
And when you don't have to do any
Oh, I
violence in your
understand.
own person.
There were-
Right. That's what and so like there are it's rarer than you would think, but sometimes it is necessary. It is the necessary thing to do violence in order to prevent worse violence in the future
Yeah.
when it's necessary. But
I-
it's rarer than you'd think.
Yeah.
It's never a justification.
But it's a noble goal. Nonviolence is a noble
Absolutely.
ideal.
Agreed.
It is an ideal. I understand. If somebody came and threatened my grandkids or kids,
Right.
I would. There's no
No
hesitation. At my own, risk my life. I would. I wish I would feel the same way about everybody on the whole planet's kids, and I
That's
sort of
right.
wish that's my ideal. If I
Right.
felt that way about all kids.
Favoritism.
We could extend that sphere,
Right.
that imaginary
Right.
radius.
The radius of self-interest
Yeah.
Yeah.
to be infinite.
Right.
Well,
right.
of course, it's hammered into us in capitalism. This is what it's all about. Even in Darwin,
Well,
even
right.
individual, but it's not that way. If you really understand Darwin, it's not the individual. How can a salmon go up and die? How can a woman go through menopause? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
you can't reproduce.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not genetically, it's not ingrained into us. Just the genes are looking out for their survival, but it's not. The individual can easily
and
give
go.
up.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure, but I imagine these inclinations towards kin have their evolutionary basis.
Oh, of
right?
course.
They're
I mean, that's
selected
what explains
for-
altruism.
Yeah,
One of
right,
the
right.
reasons that we can care for anybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
What was
So-
that one quote? I would gladly die for 2 brothers or 16 half
Yeah,
cousins.
John Maynard Smith. No, that was not John Maynard Smith. That was the British
Haldane?
Haldane.
Did the,
Haldane.
he did
Yeah.
the
For
math?
For 8 nephews.
8
He
nephews.
did
that's
the
what it-
math?
Yeah, yeah. You just do the math. Yeah, and it explains it. Yeah.
Two-
It
Brothers
really
are 8
it does.
nephews.
And
Yes,
then,
yes.
And then Hamilton.
Truly.
Hamilton really got into it, and over here, Williams,
I don't.
Evolution of Sex. Anyway, he was. How, from a gene's point of view, can these things happen?
Right.
How? Here's the big problem. How can sex happen? Sex
Right.
is
Double whammy.
Yeah. How can you a cell say, I'm going to split up these genes and put them over here and put them over here? I mean, so
It's a
we do
double
have
whammy.
understanding.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
probably because there's viruses taking over and it leads to diversity and
Right.
I mean it's so much fun to try. I wish if I could live again, if I had 100 lives, that would be one of them. To study the origin of not of sex. I mean, I'm talking about this
Single
pecker
cell.
going in a hole. I'm talking
right.
about understanding how that could happen.
Right.
Well,
And there's very good theories.
Talking about it's the 50-50 shot. Mitosis.
yeah.
Meiosis.
I said it was 50-50.
See, mitosis is simple.
Right.
All the
It-
genes
it's
go
the
here.
meiosis that you're talking
Yeah,
about. That is the
meiosis
confounding one. Right.
Meiosis
yeah.
is
Right.
a wonderful,
Well,
wonderful thing to explain.
I mean, it's so astonishing because if you think about mitosis, the information in the context of the cell and the DNA strand and ribosomes and all that, mitosis is taking what is known. Life knows what that gene means. It has meaning, known meaning, and I'm just going to do more of the same forever.
Right. It's safe.
My
It's code.
meiosis,
It's code.
yes,
It's
meiosis is saying, let's see what happens. Unknown.
That's
That is
shuffle up and deal.
Yeah,
it is.
It is.
Yes, it is, and it is. There is a principle in the universe that favors exploration into the unknown, and this goes all the way back to meiosis, and that is the most extraordinary thing to think about. Meiosis was selected for. Nature discovered the means of discovering more information.
Right. This is something I've asked you
No,
about before.
And
but
the way it did that is by recombining information.
Right.
That's the
But it
only
doesn't know.
consequence of meiosis is recombining DNA.
Right.
Right.
Right. And that's and you know, like that, like we've talked about time, we've talked about the end of the universe and new things, and like how do you eliminate suffering, all this other. You must confront the unknown. You must turn your back on all the information and meaning. What is the universe expanding into? What is the past when it becomes the future? So you must touch that interface between the known and the unknown, and you must go there.
No, it's not that you must. Either it happens or it doesn't.
But that's what I mean when I talk about conscientiousness
Yeah.
and like doing what's
And consciousness and science.
yeah,
And decency
that
and justice.
true science actually confronts that of like we don't know everything. That
Yeah.
you must get new information
And
into the world,
it's
and it's
pragmatic. Let's try this and try this.
right. There's trial and error.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to sit there, it's so hard. The analogy I use is like a record player. Like if you that needle has to balance just right on that surface. If you have a set ideology where you say, I know everything and it's all explained, it's like the needle just digging into the record. I am making reality conform to my belief system in my brain, and that gives you things like the Catholic Church. If the needle just flies up in the air, well, probably you're insane. So it has to balance. How do I know what I know? You have to let reality set where that needle is.
Where are you wrong? So, where in your life, in your thinking, do you hope you're wrong?
mass extinction.
Huh?
The mass extinction. I
I
hope.
hope you're wrong about the mass extinction.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, because it's the evidence seems to be that it's so much worse than even the Permian. There was they did a study. There was a 30-year study in Germany of flying insects in a nature reserve far away from any city, and there's been a reduction in the mass of flying insects of like 75%.
Oh, I know. And the birds. But
This is not the canary in the coal mine. This is
mass extinction means not just humans. You're talking
know.
about everything. But when you think it all started from,
Yeah, no, I know.
it'll happen. I think
I know.
there's an inconsistency to DNA, a practicality, a pragmatism to the way it works, not some plan. Hey,
Right.
I actually, there'll be a wonderful diversity of life.
Oh yeah.
It won't be wonderful because nobody would be there to wonder.
I
Maybe.
disagree with that. I think we're going to evolve into like 5 species. It'll be nuts.
Well, no, but you think somebody will be wondering. When I say wondering,
yeah,
I'm talking
okay,
about the
okay.
human thing.
Okay.
There'll be life.
Oh, of course. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not talking about when I say mass extinction, I do not mean the extinction of all life at all.
Yeah.
I am talking about how it took 20 million years for the Permian extinction to bounce back.
Yeah.
So I am talking about,
And you're
you
right.
wanted to know what I want to be wrong about. I am talking about 20 million years of very serious biosphere impoverishment. And then, my God, think now the rats are on all the Pacific Islands and the goats and the pigs.
And
Dude,
the-
it's good.
and
There's
the
going to be
pigeons.
Yeah.
And the crows and the
Oh,
house
it's going to be
sparrows.
astonishing
Yeah.
because they're all going to just
There'll
go
be house sparrow descendants the size of T-Rex.
Yeah, elephant birds, things like that. Yes, it'll be really neat. It'll be really cool. I wish I could see that world. If I had a crystal ball, I would. But there'll be giant goats or maybe like mini pygmy goats
Yeah.
living next to giant rats and stuff. It'll be so neat. Pacific Islands,
The extinctions are real. I mean,
Yes, I know.
All of these large mammals and large predators, they're doomed.
They are.
Because as the population grows, who's going to get that land?
Yeah.
I mean, we have these national parks.
hard
I
to
mean,
think about.
Trump is already trying to take them away.
Yeah, well.
The current government. I won't use that word, that person's name, but I mean, it really is. Just go in and exploit it for what? We're going to get that gold out for this year's profit. I mean, all the gold in the world you could fit in this room. Solid gold.
It's a bit more.
Huh?
It's like a swimming pool.
Well, okay. This is a big. It's like a swimming
It's
pool.
an open
think about it.
concept.
Right,
Adam.
yeah.
I mean, it's
no,
for
I know.
gold up in Alaska on the Bristol Bay.
Yeah.
I mean, the capital. It's not the president. It's the way of thinking.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
getting tired.
Okay. That's a good, I think, hour and a half, guys.
We
Pretty
did
good.
all right.
Yeah. All right.
And we've got more things to
We do.
rehash
Yeah,
in the
but I'm
future
done.
as well.
Okay.
We didn't get very
All right.
biological. But
This
all
is
right.
Muggs and Luke and Adam signing out.